Hare Krishna, and today we are here with Kalakanta Prabhu, one of my favorite authors. He is the author of this book, A God Who Dances. You can find the link below in the description.
Since 2006, my wife and I have been operating a college preaching center in Gainesville, Florida called Krishna House. And after the first year or two, we implemented some of the practices Srila Prabhupada introduced in the very earliest temples in ISKCON. We made the gender equity more the norm. We relaxed rigid rules and regulations to the bare minimum and minimized the cultural steps the newcomer would have to take in order to become a devotee. So this has proven to be very successful. We've had over 300 devotees who have joined there or come to be trained there at Krishna House. And in the course of that, naturally over the 10 years, many of them have inquired about ashram life, Grihasta ashram. So to catalog and kind of memorialize our experiences, Chitra Mitra and I are writing a book called, working title is Krishna House. And it is about the misconceptions of ashram life that tend to proliferate in ISKCON. So there are some basic misconceptions that I could address here. First is that brahmachari life is superior to grihastha life, or vice versa. Actually, whatever ashram is appropriate for one, that is the best ashram. The second misconception is that sex is bad. Well, in the Gita, Krishna says that he is sex life, which is not contrary to religious principle. So, misused sex, illicit sex is bad. But sex can be used in Krishna service, and if something can be used in Krishna service, it must be used. So, sex life is often seen as a terrible enemy, and this is a misconception about Grihastha life that creates a lot of tension in marriages. While we're on that issue, it's certainly critically important for new couples before they get married to have premarital counseling, so their understandings and expectations of sex, of children, are very clearly understood by both parties, so that there's no surprises after the yajna. Third misconception is that women adversely affect the Krishna consciousness of men. This is another misconception based on the bodily concept of life. In Los Angeles many years ago, one brahmachari wrote to Srila Prabhupada saying, rather than hearing Jamuna sing the Govinda prayers in the morning, since renunciates are not supposed to hear women's voices, we'd rather hear a tape of your divine grace singing the Govinda prayers, which you've already made. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, he said that song was choral, it was not just a woman singing, it was many voices singing. But beyond that, he said, if a brahmacharya is agitated, then they should go to the forest. So the point is that if men are disturbed in the presence of women, is it the woman's fault or is it the man's fault? And the inclination to say, oh, it's the woman's fault. But in fact, this is really a lack of spiritual maturity on the part of men. As we see in highly advanced devotees, they are not affected by men or women's presence. They just give of themselves and try to help that spirit soul regardless of their physical dress. Another misconception that we find in some circles in ISKCON is that misogyny is okay for male devotees. It's somehow part of the Vedic culture to treat women with disdain or with a dismissive attitude. It is okay to tell women that they are limited to a particular set of duties in varnashram. It's okay to abuse women emotionally or physically. These are horribly destructive things for a marriage, and they have no place in a Krishna conscious marriage. So misogyny, or the hatred of women, is not inherent in the life of a devotee who's trying to lead a varnashram life. Finally, another general misconception is that sannyasis are meant to try to help prevent men from getting married. this is not the duty of a sannyasi. If it were, then Srila Prabhupada was a terrible failure as a sannyasi because nearly all of his disciples got married. In fact, Srila Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to marry, seeing that that was their natural position. So sannyas, those who are genuinely comfortable in a renounced life, should understand, or do understand, those who are mature, that everybody needs encouragement in Krishna consciousness to act according to their nature, whether they're male or female, single or married. So those are some general misconceptions. A few specific misconceptions about Grihasta life. We have 4. Devotees only get married because they're so lusty that they can't stay single. Devotees get married for many reasons. The main reason, in our experience, is loneliness and the need for a confidant and a friend. Sex is a tiny fraction of a good marriage. It is just a small part. The relationship is much more important. The ability to be in a service mood with your partner. That's what makes a good marriage. And if people feel that they're only getting married to satisfy their lust, the result of that is going to be disastrous. Because as soon as the lust is satisfied, or as soon as the desire for this particular person dwindles, and then lust needs to go somewhere else, then the marriage is destroyed. So in Kali Yuga, it's in the 12th canto, it's said that lust, the sexual attraction, is the basis for marriages in this age. It should certainly not be in ISKCON. Nor should people who are getting married be criticized as being too lusty to do otherwise. Second misconception is that marriage is for losers. People who can't make it in the real thing and have to get married. Well, Prabhupada did call it a concession, but it is not that because one accepts a particular concession, therefore they are inferior, or they have failed. It is a legitimate concession, and one that is meant to be used for those who need it. And those who need it and take it can go to the supreme destination. Those who don't need it, they can also go to the supreme destination. But those who need it and don't take it, they're not going to make it. So marriage should be recognized, encouraged, appreciated, supported. Nothing is more important in a varnashram social system than stable, productive grihastas. Because from them come children, from them come income and money. And no other varna or no other ashrams produce income. So everyone depends upon the grihastas. And to be productive throughout a long life in marriage, the marriage needs to be stable and honored by all concerned. Another misconception is that householders who have ordinary external lives are really just karmis living in a blind well. If devotee families have televisions, if they are up with the news, if they have cars, if they have a nice house, it doesn't mean that they're just materialists. Sometimes householders are very poor, like Sudama. Sometimes they're very opulent, like Ambarish. That amount of money that comes in the course of household life will vary from family to family. But if one has wealth and is living a more comfortable life, say, than one might live in an ashram, to criticize such a person is an expression of envy, and it really has no place in the life of devotees. We remember the pastime of Gadadhar Pandit, the renunciate, coming to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who was so opulently dressed and ornamented. And as soon as he saw him, Gadadhar thought, oh, this person is this great devotee, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, I've been hearing about. But after hearing him speak and seeing the manifestation of Krishna consciousness in him, Gadadhar felt very ashamed, and he begged him for forgiveness and asked him to accept him as a disciple. So we should not judge a book by its cover. People will have different levels of economic development. It doesn't grade their Krishna consciousness according to how they live. And finally, a fourth misconception for householders is that a brahmachari is qualified to marry only when he can remain celibate when living with his wife. The first thing that people think about in marriage is that, well, this is going to be a chance for me to relieve my sexual desires. So this misconception is that one has to be very strictly celibate and so strong in spiritual life that even when living with his wife, he can be perfectly celibate. This is not realistic. Some people do that and do it, and they're very honorable. But for people who can't do that, it doesn't mean that they are now fallen, incapable devotees, insincere.